Hello, welcome viewers. You're here with the National Regiment. I am Brandon Kelly, joined with my fellow reenactor Matt Borders, who is also a licensed battlefield guide here at Antietam National Battlefield. With this year being the 160th anniversary of the battle, we wanted to do something special and go through each regiment that the companies of the National Regiment portrays, show the actions of those individual units. To remind everyone that the National Regiment portrays real people. You know, these units were real units, and to bring honor to those units and to tell their stories. So thank you for joining us. We're going to be covering famous parts of the battlefield such as the Cornfield, Bunker Church, Bloody Lane, and Burnside Bridge. It's going to be quite a ride, and we're glad that you guys were able to join us. Welcome to the first stop on our tour. We're here at the Joseph Poffenberger farm behind me, site of the 1st Corps' encampment the night of September 16th. You have the 1st Corps under Major General Joseph Hooker. 9,000 Federal soldiers would be in these fields behind me. And they were actually instructed to have no campfires that night because they were so close to the Confederate position. So you have most of the men, no campfires. And it rained terribly the night before. So for many of those men, it would have been miserable, wet, and for some of them, many of them, it was their last night on earth. 2 regiments in that corps are the 7th and 9th Pennsylvania Reserve. These 2 regiments were part of George Gordon Meade's division, and at 5:30 in the morning, you have Confederate artillery guns positioned on Nicodemus Heights to your left would begin a bombardment against the Federal soldiers in these fields. The Federals would rise up and begin their advance against the Confederates, going through the North Woods and into the famous Bloody Cornfield just beyond. You have these 2 regiments, the 7th and 9th Pennsylvania Reserves, advancing when there were still stars in the sky, as they would go out and make history in the fields just beyond these woods.
Now, as Brandon had said, Federal forces have now advanced south from Poffenberger Farm, moving towards the infamous Bloody Cornfield, which is behind us. This 24-acre cornfield in 1862 was anywhere from 7 to 8 feet tall, ready to be harvested. Federal forces are going to advance with a 2-division front. James Ricketts off towards the East Woods, moving through the edges of the East Woods and through the cornfield, would push into the infamous cornfield first. To my left, moving down the Sharpsburg-Hagerstown Turnpike and also through the corn, is Abner Doubleday's division. His attack would be slightly after Ricketts, and then acting as a reserve for both of these would be, of course, right here in the middle, the division of George Gordon Meade, with 3 brigades of Pennsylvania Reserves. One of those regiments within the PA Reserves is actually right about where we're at. The 7th Pennsylvania Reserves is going to be along this fence line on the northern edge of the infamous cornfield. Now, they're going to be here around 7 o'clock in the morning when things begin to go, pardon the pun, but south for Federal forces that have already driven southward. Confederate counterattacks, specifically from John Bell Hood's division, are pushing against those Federal troops and driving them back northward through the corn. Evander Law's men will be pushing through the open fields just south of the cornfield, through the edges of the East Woods, driving Federal troops from Ricketts' division back up through the corn. And it would be the Pennsylvania Reserves on this line that are going to stop them. Specifically, the 7th PA Reserve will actually refuse its flank and turn off in this direction to hammer the advancing troops of Evander Law's men, including the 6th Georgia Infantry. It would be because of these Pennsylvania Reserves that this counterattack would be stopped. However, we have another Confederate counterattack, or another portion of this counterattack that is moving through the cornfield off in this direction. Let's head down this way. Now, we've moved off to the west, down the brigade line with George Gordon Meade's men. We're actually along the fence line, still north of the cornfield, with the 11th and the 9th Pennsylvania Reserve. And advancing through the corn directly in front of us, we would have seen the bobbing flags of the 1st Texas Infantry. Now, the Texas Brigade has driven northward, as those other Confederate counterattacks have. They've been pushing back against famed units such as my beloved Iron Brigade. But they're now going to run into a blue wall here at the northern end of the cornfield, the Pennsylvania Reserves. One of those regiments, the 9th PA Reserves, would later recount pouring fire into the Confederate advance. And those flags, those Texas flags, are going to drop at least 13 times during this advance. 13 different color bearers would be cut down trying to advance the flags of the 1st Texas. And those flags will be captured by federal troops, specifically the federal troops that are right here with the 9th PA Reserve. And Samuel Johnson will receive the Medal of Honor for retrieving the 1st Texas banner and turning it over to federal authorities. The flag of the 1st Texas Infantry, both of their flags, because they are a 2-flag Confederate regiment, there's something a little rare, both those flags will not be returned to the state of Texas until 1905. After over 2 hours of bloody conflict in the northern end of the field, the 12th Corps has finally begun to arrive here at Antietam National Battlefield at around 7:35 in the morning. And they're pushing south through the East Woods, which we have out here in the distance, down the Smoketown Road, and moving on to the northern end of the field. One of the divisions in the 12th Corps is that of George Sears Greene. Now, Greene's division is made up of 3 brigades, but only 2 of them are going to see significant action here at Antietam. Goodrich's brigade is broken off very early in their advance and sent over towards the infamous bloody Cornfield to help support federal troops over there. The 2 brigades we'll be looking at, though, are Stainrook and Tyndale. They're moving down through the East Woods, and they will slam up against Confederate reinforcements that have come up from the center part of the battlefield from the area of the sunken road. Driving these Confederate reinforcements back through the East Woods, they would then push out into the open fields just south of the East Woods, moving towards, as they would describe, the burning farmstead, which we now know as Moomaw Farm. Moving with Stainrook's brigade, one of these 2 brigades in Greene's division that we're talking about is the 3rd Maryland, the unit that I am usually portraying with the National Regiment. Now, the 3rd is going to be sweeping down past the burning Moomaw farmstead. They're actually going to be moving across this landscape behind me here, sweeping up onto the ridge pretty much to where the visitor center is today. Tyndale's brigade is passing right over the ground that I'm currently on, and they're going to be much closer towards the intersection with the Smoketown Road and the Dunker Church, which we see just peeking up over the rise. But let's head on over and we'll talk about where the 3rd is. Now, at approximately 9:30 in the morning, the 2 brigades of Greene's division have reached the rising ground behind you where the visitor center is today. They are going to hold there for just about an hour. During this time, of course, we would have Sedgwick's division of the 2nd Corps go hurling into the West Woods, and the rest of the 2nd Corps, French's division in particular, moving off behind the Sharpsburg Ridge, heading for its collision with the infamous sunken road. But right behind you guys on this ridgeline would be the thin blue line of Greene's division, and they are going to advance at around 10:30 in the morning, pushing into the open fields behind me and into the vicinity of the Dunker Church. Tyndale's brigade is going to succeed in capturing the immediate area of the Dunker Church and portions of the West Wood. The 3rd Maryland is moving right across this ground. We've actually passed by their monument, which is just behind you guys on the other side of the road, the Sharpsburg-Hagerstown Turnpike. The 3rd Maryland is going to advance into these fields, and it's actually going to be facing in this direction. Now, in 1862, this house was not here, and I'm very pleased to say much of the land that we are currently looking at has been purchased by the American Battlefield Trust and the National Park Service, and these two organizations are working on and negotiating an exchange of this property. So this land will be preserved in perpetuity very soon. The 3rd Maryland is not a big regiment here at the Battle of Antietam. 148 men max. They're going to sustain approximately 20% casualties in this fight. That's not a ton of guys, it's about 29 men, but that's 29 lives that will be shattered by the fighting here at Antietam. Now, they are going to be holding their position for about 2 hours. The 3rd is actually dealing with elements of Kershaw's brigade that had been driven back earlier in the morning. Some of those guys have come back up again, and those South Carolinians are going to get some Maryland lead. However, by 12:30, additional Confederate forces moving inside of Tyndale. He's going to take the Purnell Legion, and also elements of the 13th New Jersey will be rolled up and begin to be pushed out. 3rd Maryland, along with the rest of the brigade, will fall back right through you guys, back to the top of the ridge behind you, the Sharpsburg Ridge, where they would continue to hold for another hour or so until finally replaced by elements of the Union 6th Corps. Now, we are just north of the infamous Bloody Lane here at Antietam National Battlefield. What's happened is that it's now getting on towards 9:30 in the morning, and Federal forces have begun to shift south towards the sunken road. The reason for this is actually due to that thin blue line we mentioned earlier. The troops from General Greene's division, including the 3rd Maryland, are up there where the Visitor Center is today. The next division of the Union 2nd Corps, William French's division, has come out of the East Woods behind you. French has looked around. He's been told to get onto the left flank of the Union line, but the guys he was following can't be seen. They've gone up and over the Sharpsburg Ridge and had plunged into the West Woods. The only Federal troops that French can see is that thin blue line that we mentioned up on the Sharpsburg Ridge. Now, those being the only Federal troops French can see, he is going to swing his division around and begin moving south. He will pass by the burning Moomaw Farm behind you. He will pass by the Roulette Farm. And he is going to begin to advance southward with us up this ridgeline towards the sunken road. With him will be 3 brigades of infantry. He's got approximately 4,000 men in his division, 10 regiments, 7 of which are going into combat for the first time. One of those new regiments is the 14th Connecticut Infantry, and the 14th Connecticut will be part of the 2nd line of attacks that move against the sunken road. The 1st line is going to crest this ridge behind me, get on top of it, fire down into the sunken road, and then charge it, trying to take the road at the point of the bayonet. A simple order for inexperienced troops. These men would be facing Alabama infantry. John Brown Gordon's 6th Alabama is down there, and Gordon would later write of this attack, stating, "My rifles flamed and roared in the Federals' faces like an unbroken sheet of lightning, and the 1st rank, with few exceptions, went down in the all-consuming blast." Max Weber's brigade, that 1st Federal line to attack the sunken road, will sustain over 400 casualties in this attack and be thrown back. Now a 2nd line would be advanced, Colonel Dwight Morris's brigade, and in that brigade is of course going to be the 14th Connecticut. Their monument stands here at Antietam National Battlefield, and they're near the end of the brigade line as they advance towards the sunken road. These soldiers have been in the United States Army for less than a month at this point. They're as green as they can be, and they're moving directly towards one of the nastiest points on the Antietam battlefield. Dwight Morris's brigade, the 2nd line in French's division, is going to advance to the top of this ridge. Now, again, Confederate forces are below us here in this sunken road, but the 14th Connecticut, they're in a much more dire situation than many of the rest of their comrades. For if we look off here to the west, we have no ridge at all. They're standing basically on a flat field. And something that we often don't think about is that how rolling and undulating the Antietam battlefield is, and how much variation in depth the sunken road actually has. The 14th Connecticut will be in a straight-up slugging match with Alabama infantry directly behind me in almost a straight-on fight. The Alabamans have earthworks of rails to protect them. The 14th Connecticut is in an open field. The 14th Connecticut, a brand new regiment here at Antietam, will sustain over 145 casualties at their first engagement of the war. Now this back and forth slugfest with the 14th Connecticut and the Alabamans behind you, it's going to take its toll, and this second line of Morris's brigade is also going to be forced back. They had held the top of the ridge here, but they had not charged as the previous line before them. Now, General French is going to advance his third line of infantry, Nathan Kimball's brigade. Brigadier General Kimball's brigade has 4 regiments in it, 3 of which have gone into action before, and one of them we all know very well, the 8th Ohio.
So as Matt said, we're right here now in the spot where Nathan Kimball's brigade was, the only veteran brigade of French's division, and one of those units in that brigade is the 8th Ohio. The 8th Ohio would be successful in taking this position here. You can even see their monument right here over my left shoulder, the gray monument in the background in that road. Before they took that position, they had to go through a severe firefight with the Confederates right in front of me along this wooden fence line here where the sunken road is. They would come up over the hill, they'd be engaged in heavy firefight against those Confederates, and they would then drop back behind the hill right behind you and use that hill for cover to come up and take shots against those Confederates, stabilizing the Federal line. With the Federal line stabilized because of the 8th Ohio's actions, when they're able to go in, take the position, they're capturing 300 Confederate prisoners. But this fight was not over yet. As I said previously, for the 8th Ohio and their comrades, the fight was not yet over. 2 Confederate regiments, the 3rd Arkansas and 27th North Carolina, will advance in the gully behind me, going to your right, threatening French's right flank. You have the 8th Ohio, 130th Pennsylvania, and 14th Indiana forming a battle line behind you to attack the Confederates. They're going to advance along this field to go and engage those Confederates. And those 2 Confederate units will suffer heavy casualties with the arrival of the 6th Corps to the right along the hill here into the field, especially with the 7th Maine Infantry. They're going to force the Confederates back the way they came and have secured this area of the field in Union hands.
With Nathan Kimball's brigade and the 8th Ohio now establishing the Federal line in front of the infamous sunken road, the last chunk, the final division of the Union 2nd Corps, the last block of 5,000 men under Israel Richardson, is going to begin to arrive at around 10:30 in the morning. They are going to be sweeping behind the rolling hills in front of the sunken road around the very flank of the Confederate position here in the road. The sunken road was a strong Confederate defensive position when we're coming at you. But if you can get along the flank, you can now fire down the length of it. One of the regiments doing that will be the 5th New Hampshire Infantry. The 5th New Hampshire has 319 troops in its ranks, and it is going to sustain nearly 40% casualties in this slugfest down here on the extreme right end of the Confederate line. Their colonel, of course, the famous Colonel Cross and his red bandana. He and his men are going to get down into the fields behind you, which is now in thick corn, so we can't actually see the low ground beyond the corn here. They're going to get down behind that rolling terrain, and he is going to call out to his men amidst the din of war for his soldiers to put on the war paint, which means they're going to pull out a cartridge and actually smear black powder on their faces. And then, prior to going in to the attack, he would tell his men to give him the war whoop. And instead of the Yankee hurrah, we would actually hear this almost American Indian whooping begin to come from the 5th New Hampshire Infantry as they slam into the flank of the North Carolina Brigade and begin to roll it up. It would be soldiers from the 5th New Hampshire that would describe the ghastly flooring of Bloody Lane, 2 to 3 deep in Confederate dead and wounded for nearly a quarter mile. The fighting here at the sunken road would be some of the most iconic, and the images that come from this part of the battlefield, some of the most horrendous from the American Civil War.
As Matt just described, with the 5th New Hampshire successfully assisting the repulse of the enemy from the sunken road, you then have Israel Richardson calling on his last brigade forward to assist in pushing back the enemy. Those men under John Brooke would advance to this position here. However, one unit in particular, the 53rd Pennsylvania, will be left in reserve. That regiment was on the far left flank of Brooke's line, and even though they would be held in reserve, they would assist other federal regiments, such as the 8th Ohio, in repulsing an enemy counterattack led by John Cook, the 27th North Carolina and 3rd Arkansas. The same 2 regiments that were involved in the 8th Ohio's counterattack with the 130th Pennsylvania and 14th Indiana. The 53rd Pennsylvania will go and assist those other regiments in repulsing the enemy. And we're going to head to the area that they began their counterattack against the 27th North Carolina at the Roulette Barn. After hearing that the enemy is launching another attack, John Brooke will send 3 regiments to assist in repulsing it. Those regiments include the 66th and 57th New York and the 53rd Pennsylvania. The 66th and 57th New York will be assisting the other federal units repulsing Howell Cobb's men, but the 53rd Pennsylvania will assist other units such as the 8th Ohio in repulsing John Cook's men. The 53rd Pennsylvania would arrive at the Roulette Barn behind me, and as Bradley Gottfried, author of Maps of Antietam, stated, the 53rd Pennsylvania unleashed a deadly fire on the left flank of the 27th North Carolina, which would be in a cornfield just over the hill to your right. This cornfield will be just over the hills behind me. As you can see, this is actually the same field from a different angle that the 8th Ohio, 130th Pennsylvania, and 14th Indiana advanced against the enemy. The 53rd Pennsylvania, as I said, would have been to your right, attacking the 27th North Carolina's left flank. But it was only together that these federal units were able to drive off this attack by John Cook's men, forcing the enemy to retreat back the way they came, through the gully to our right, and in doing so, helping to secure the federal right flank. Thank you for watching part 1 of our video today. Please click the link in the description below for part 2. Special shout out to Tim Veloso, Carol Reardon, authors of Field Guide to Antietam, and Brad Gottfried, authors of both Brigades of Antietam and Maps of Antietam, for their amazing scholarly work in bringing the research together for this video. Please follow our other links down below for our Instagram page and our website if you're interested in joining, and look forward to seeing you guys in the next video.